Good afternoon, all. I am Town Manager Julian Suso, and it's my extraordinary pleasure and honor to convene this formal ceremony. We will kick things off with Tom Goux, who is to my right with his concertina. Tom is going to play a musical selection of maritime tradition. Tom?
Thank you. It's a wonderful morning. Wonderful afternoon here. I could begin with an old hymn. Let the lower lights be burning. Send a beam across the waves. Some poor fainting, struggling sailor. You may rescue, you may save. But I'm not going to do that one. It's a little grim. I've been a ship's cook and I've been a clipperman. I can sing, I can dance, I can walk the jibboom, I can handle a harpoon and cut a fine figure. The moment I'm found in the ship's standing room, and we'll rant and we'll roar like true-born young whalermen. Rant and we'll roar on deck and below until we sight Nobska around Martha's Vineyard. Then straight up the channel to New Bedford we'll go. I went to a dance one night in Old Toombies. There was plenty fine girls, as fine as you'd wish. I saw a young lady, she was chewing tobacco, just like a kitten a-chewing fresh fish. And we'll rant and we'll roar like true-born young sailormen. Rant and we'll roar on deck and below until we sight Nobska around Martha's Vineyard. Straight up the channel to New Bedford we'll go.
Thank you, Tom. Tom will rejoin us at the end of the ceremony for a rousing rendition of America the Beautiful, in which I'm sure we'll all join. Again, it's my great privilege as town manager to welcome everyone here. I'm going to give a very brief introduction as part of this welcome. I would just ask that in the interest of time, since we are outdoors, you would hold your applause. And I will say in advance, I don't pretend to cover everyone who is here, although everyone is certainly deserving of introduction. So anyone that I have overlooked, I will apologize to you in advance. But let me, without further ado, go forward. First, our speakers. We have behind me the Honorable U.S. Congressman William Keating. We're pleased to have a congressman with us. Also, the Honorable Massachusetts State Senator Vinny Macedo. Also behind me, Falmouth Board of Selectmen Chair Doug Jones. And those three gentlemen will be giving primary comments. Also behind me is our keynote representative from the Coast Guard, Captain KZ, as we call the captain, Kondratowicz. Captain, I hope I pronounced your name somewhat close to being correct. Who's commander of Southeast Sector New England for the U.S. Coast Guard. We're honored to have you with us, particularly in such an auspicious event. Those are our speakers. Let me also mention some of the others here with us today. Members of the Selectmen from Falmouth, Vice Chair of the Board of Selectmen, Susan Moran. Also a member of the Board of Selectmen and County Commissioner, Mary Pat Flynn. Falmouth Selectman, Rebecca Moffett, Falmouth Selectman Sam Patterson. From the Coast Guard, we have Lieutenant Kayla Furman, Lieutenant Karen Love Kutkowitz, also with the Coast Guard. We have David Skina, U.S. Coast Guard Petty Officer, with us. We have Mary Ellen Wilczynski, who's a real property specialist with the U.S. Coast Guard out of Warwick, Rhode Island. Mary Ellen was with us early and often, helping steward us through this process. A great delight to have you with us here, Mary Ellen. Also, we have Lieutenant Commander Lisa Sharkey, I believe is in attendance with the U.S. Coast Guard as well. I do want to thank members of the Coast Guard Color Guard to my left and to my rear. We're honored and privileged to have you join us for this important ceremony as well. I also want to welcome Steve Wagner, who's the flotilla commander with U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary. On behalf of the Auxiliary, welcome, Commander. I want to thank and welcome one of my colleagues, Frank Duffy, Town Council with the Town of Falmouth. Frank was a key player working with me and so many others in ushering this process to its current successful conclusion. Assistant Town Manager Heather Harper, Falmouth Police Chief Edward Dunn, Falmouth Acting Fire Chief Michael Small, our Director of Public Works Ray Jack. Now moving on to our colleagues with the Friends of Nobska Light. Brian Nickerson, who's President of the Friends Group. Welcome, Brian. Catherine Bumpus, Executive Director of Friends of Nobska Light and a key player as well in our being here today. Thank you for all the work behind the scenes, Catherine, to make today a reality. I also want to take the opportunity to recognize the 4 nonprofit groups who, without their leadership coming together in organizing the Friends of Nobska Light, would have made today not possible in its present form. Our 4 nonprofits that created the Friends of Nobska Light are first and foremost the Falmouth Historical Society. Mark Schmidt is the Executive Director. Rocco Maffei is the President. Not sure if Rocco's able to be with us here today. The second important nonprofit, Historic Highfield. Peter Franklin, of course, is the Executive Director, and Meg Pierce is President. The Woods Hole Historical Museum, Arlene Lowenstein, President. Arlene is with us here today. And also importantly, the 4th nonprofit, the Woods Hole Community Association. One of the co-presidents is with us, again, Catherine Bumpus, who serves us in multiple capacities. And now, without further ado, and with my apologies to any I may have inadvertently overlooked, moving forward on the ceremony, it's my privilege to introduce Falmouth Board of Selectmen Chair Doug Jones for his comments. Doug?
2 years ago, the town was approached with the possibility of what to do about the lighthouse and the lighthouse keepers' houses. And the town had no question that this is something that we needed to be able to take care of, but it was only with the efforts of these nonprofits that we were able to, with assurance, be able to sign on the dotted line for the license. It's something that we did quite easily because we knew all the work would be done by other people. But it's something that we knew had to happen. And it's thanks to the Coast Guard, to the town manager's office, to the town council's office, and to the Friends of Nobska that we can all be here making sure that both the lighthouse and the lighthouse keepers' houses will be around for a long time. It was a fantastic cooperative effort to preserve this iconic beacon of the town. For many of us who've grown up here, this lighthouse has represented safety, warmth, a place to come home to. That when the lighthouse shines out across the waters of Martha's Vineyard, giving us a way through one of the most treacherous waters you could imagine, the currents of Woods Hole, or coming home from Martha's Vineyard, or those who lived close enough that could hear the foghorn blaring when we knew it was a foggy night and say we still knew it was there, was a place of great warmth for us to come to and know it was always here. It stood for years as a source of help and safety to mariners. For those people here for a short time, also when they run by in their Falmouth road race, this is the place they run to at the first mile and a half, still feeling good. They may have 5.5 miles to go, but they think, oh, the lighthouse, that was wonderful. I felt great then. They may have a harder time later, but the lighthouse is something people think of a lot when they think of Falmouth and Woods Hole. And this is just another example of what Falmouth does with its history. That we make sure it stays around for the future generations to be able to enjoy, whether it's the Emerald House in East Falmouth, Historic Highfield Hall up in Beebe Woods, the Conant House, the Kathleen Lee Bates House, the Woods Hole School, the Woods Hole Fire Station. For years, Falmouth has done the right thing of saying it takes effort, it takes courage, it makes decisions to make sure that we can have these places forever. And so I'm very, very proud that we're able to be here, that we'll be able to take on the responsibility of licensing the property, and as soon as possible, hand over all the responsibility of renovating, maintaining, preserving, and opening this building for people to come and see to the Friends of Nobska. So thank you so much for being here, and come and enjoy the building.
Thank you, Doug. Now it's my great privilege to introduce Captain John Kondratowicz, U.S. Coast Guard Commander, Sector Southeastern New England. Captain?
Thanks, Julian. And take my hat off. It's a little easier, especially with the weather out here. And you know what? When you're in Woods Hole, it's never a bad day in Woods Hole. Some days are just better than others, right? So that's how we'll prepare. First off, Tom, thank you very much for the sea shanty. I'm going to call it that. And if you go back in history, and if you really think about this, in 1829 is when the inception of Nobska Light was founded. So if you go back since 1829, I bet you there was a lot of sea shanties happening here because there was no radio, there was no television, there's no internet. So just think about that. And as I indicated, since 1829, Nobska has stood here, right here in the town of Falmouth and Woods Hole. And what's amazing about that is it's aided so many mariners in and around the area, especially the whaling fleet from Nantucket and also the Vineyard, and even local mariners right here in Woods Hole as they cross the Vineyard. And now from there, 1876 is when the tower was outfitted with the 4th order Fresnel lens, which emits light to mariners 14 nautical miles away. In 1939, the lighthouse service became part of the modern-day United States Coast Guard. And at that point is when the Coast Guard assumed the role and manned Nobska. Since 1973, the light was manned. In 1985, that light was automated with a battery backup to ensure no disruption in operations. And in 1987, Nobska Light was placed on the National Register of Historical Places. The quarters were occupied up until 2013, and today we have in attendance Captain Pete Collum and his wife Edna, who are here, who used to occupy that back before in the 1980s. So, Captain, great to have you here, and I guarantee you've got tons of stories. And as you look at it today, in 2016, now marks another day in the historical life of Nobska, as the Coast Guard hands over the keys and the management of this beautiful piece of property to the town of Falmouth. The Coast Guard will ensure that we continue to maintain the light so that it burns bright, and it's the signal for those to aid the neighbors and everybody from Vineyard. Even if they don't want to hear the sound of the fog signal, they're going to hear it. The light in the home will soon be open to the public by the town. The public will be able to dream what it must have been like living in Nobska as the keeper back during the nor'easters back in the 1800s and the 1900s, and even this century. Just think of having to barricade yourself inside the light tower for 2 days, ensuring that the flame remained lit. Having to run through driving rain and snow to the oil shack to fill the cans with whale's oil and kerosene to fuel a lamp to keep the mariners out of harm's way. The stories, the memories, and the traditions will live on. Even today, there's still stories, there's still traditions. Flying Santa, which visits Nobska every Christmas since 1929. Captain Bill Winkapaw, Mr. Ed Snow, and even today, Mr. Brian Tagg flies over the light, delivers toys to the lightkeeper's children. Today brings new traditions, partnerships, community involvement to ensure American history lives on. God bless America. Thank you.
Thank you, Captain. Now we will hear from Massachusetts State Senator Vinny Macedo. Senator?
Julian, thank you so much, and thank you for the opportunity to say a few words. This is great. I forgot my accordion, so forgive me. I won't be playing any tunes here, but there was a little hold up here, as many of you know, that this wasn't going to happen because they had no one to cover the 12 to 8 shift. So I want you to know that Lance Lambros is offered in his downtime. Thank you, Lance. Where are you hiding there? So, but this again is a wonderful thing to see the federal government, the state, and the community working together to try to make something and save something of such significance as this beautiful lighthouse. And it wouldn't be possible if it were not the friends and Catherine and Brian. I want to just thank you for your commitment. I remember the early meetings of wanting to put this together and trying to get everyone to, at the same table to work to make this come to fruition, and the cooperation of the town, and as you can see with Doug and as the Board of Selectmen as well as Julian, this has come to fruition, and it's this amazing facility that is going to be saved for future generations. As we all know, the nautical world has changed quite a bit. and there isn't the great reliance, but the significance and the historic significance of such a beautiful landmark makes it that we have a responsibility for our future generations to show them the legacy of the maritime industry and what it's meant to this great state. So I just thank all of you, and for those of you that are going to commit many hours and many financial resources to continue this wonderful facility and make sure that it lives on to posterity, thank you very much, and I appreciate the opportunity to say a few words.
Thank you, Senator. Now, my further privilege to introduce and formally welcome a second time our Congressman Bill Keating for his remarks. Bill?
Thank you. As we look around here, anything that's going to be said here really can't compete with the beautiful view that we have and we're surrounded by. And when I say surrounded, I mean surrounded by this magnificent view. I'm here at the federal level and the Homeland Security member also working with the Coast Guard, and I want to thank them for all their cooperation. They're magnificent in the way that they serve so many segments of our population. And when you look out at this beautiful view, you can see it's beautiful, but it's also dangerous. It's something that nature, it's an irony of nature, that something so beautiful to look at can be such a danger to our mere existence as we try and deal with that. Yet, you can't help but stand here and look around and be inspired by a view like this. Because honestly, it's more than a view, and I think everyone understands this. It's a feeling when you're here. It's a feeling looking out at the flag and our coastline and our history. It's a feeling of men and women gathering together, persevering as a country and as a community. And I look at what's occurred here over the years, and I see that beacon historically. I can imagine it going back. And I see Nobska Light serving to navigate the survival of so many of our citizens. And I'm standing here today, over 180 years later, seeing how citizens have navigated for the survival of Nobska Light. You have truly performed your mission. You have kept us alive. The Friends, the local officials, the historical societies, when this was in danger, you were there for its survival. You were there to make sure that this beautiful symbol of the best of us perseveres and is enjoyed by many more people over the years. And so many people were stewards of this beyond the Coast Guard and the auxiliary and the town. It's a day of pride. And I really feel that I'm a small part of history here, history of our country, history of New England, and certainly the history of Falmouth. This is going to be an icon and is an icon, but it's going to be a shared icon because of your work that generations to follow will be able to enjoy, view, and yes, feel. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman. We're getting near the closure of our ceremony, and part of that will be the passing of the lighthouse key. So I'm going to ask Captain Kondratowicz and Selectmen Chair Doug Jones to come forward for the formal passing of the key.
Very good.
Please, on behalf of the United States Coast Guard, please accept the key for the light, and you are the new keeper. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We'll take care of it with pride.
I guarantee we will. No, thank you.
I thought you were going to share the story how you could have passed your key.
Now it's my pleasure to ask Tom Goux to join us once again on this brisk but most beautiful day and lead us all in a rousing rendition of America the Beautiful. Tom, do you want to be up at the microphone or works for me? Thank you all.
I taught fifth graders for 20 years. I can do this. Well, it's been a wonderful gathering, and you can't have a wonderful gathering in Falmouth without singing America the Beautiful. Oh, beautiful
sing.